In controlled decision-making experiments conducted across multiple universities, participants were consistently more likely to rate fluent, fast responses as confident and correct, even when accuracy was statistically unchanged. Daniel Kahneman's research later identified this as fluency bias, where processing ease is misinterpreted as truth or competence. What people call confidence often begins as a measurement error in perception, not a stable trait. In controlled behavioral studies conducted across multiple decision-making environments, researchers repeatedly observed a consistent pattern. Individuals rated as confident were not necessarily more accurate, more skilled, or more informed than their peers. In fact, in many cases, accuracy was statistically independent of perceived confidence. What correlated more reliably was response fluency, decisional speed, in the absence of hesitation under uncertainty. Daniel Kahneman's work in judgment and decision-making later helped formalize this distinction. What people perceive as confidence often emerges from cognitive ease rather than objective competence. In one study, participants consistently rated fluent answers as more correct, even when they were wrong, which leads to a precise question. If confidence can be manufactured by processing speed and familiarity rather than truth, what exactly are people evaluating when they say someone seems confident? The psychological lens here is confidence as a behavioral output variable, not a stable personality trait. This reframes confidence from identity into measurement. In statistical psychology, what is commonly labeled confidence decomposes into observable components, response latency, verbal certainty markers, and tolerance for ambiguity under social observation. Robert Cialdini's work on social influence indirectly supports this. People infer authority not from internal states, but from external cues of decisiveness and fluency. By the end of this analysis, you will not see confidence as something people have. You will see it as something that is continuously computed by observers based on measurable behavioral signals. And more importantly, you will see how easily that computation is distorted. What people call personality is often just repeated measurement of behavior under similar conditions. In experimental settings, participants who answer quickly are consistently rated as more knowledgeable, even when their answers are incorrect. This is known as fluency bias. The brain interprets ease of processing as truth or competence. At the neural level, reduced cognitive load is misclassified as signal reliability. The observer does not detect correctness. They detect effortlessness. Confidence is often not belief, it is the absence of visible cognitive friction. Detection method: watch for individuals who maintain consistent verbal pacing regardless of question complexity. Overstabilized pacing often signals performance optimization, not understanding. This creates the first structural misunderstanding. Confidence is judged externally before it is ever internally validated, which leads to the second layer: how uncertainty is socially penalized. In group environments, hesitation is rarely evaluated neutrally. It is interpreted as incompetence. This triggers a behavioral adaptation. Individuals learn to suppress visible uncertainty. Over time, they develop what can be described as decisional masking, the concealment of internal doubt to maintain social credibility. This is reinforced through social feedback loops. Fast responses are rewarded with perceived authority. Slow responses are penalized with reduced trust. Social systems do not reward accuracy, they reward interpretability. Detection method: observe whether an individual's confidence level increases in group settings compared to private reasoning. A large discrepancy suggests adaptive performance rather than stable trait confidence, but this introduces a distortion. What is rewarded is not truth alignment, but uncertainty concealment, and this shifts us toward calibration errors. As individuals adapt to social expectations, many begin to overestimate the amount of certainty required to appear competent. This creates overcalibration of confidence expression. They begin presenting conclusions with higher certainty than their internal probability warrants. This is not deception in the traditional sense. It is optimization for social legibility. The phenomenon aligns with findings in behavioral economics. Humans systematically misalign expressed confidence with actual predictive accuracy. The more a person is rewarded for certainty, the less their confidence reflects internal probability. Detection method: compare how individuals speak in probabilistic environments versus definitive ones. Skilled overcalibrators maintain identical certainty across both domains. This leads directly into a deeper distortion: the separation between knowledge and performance. At advanced stages, confidence becomes detached from belief entirely. It becomes a performance variable optimized for audience stability. The brain begins treating social evaluation as a real-time feedback system, adjusting expression rather than cognition. This is closely related to self-presentation theory, where behavior is shaped primarily by anticipated evaluation rather than internal conviction. Confidence in this model is no longer felt, it is executed. What looks like inner certainty is often externally stabilized behavior under repeated observation. Detection method: observe confidence consistency across unfamiliar domains. Genuine confidence shows variance, performance confidence shows uniformity, and yet this is still not the full paradox, because what appears as stability may itself be a statistical artifact. But here is where it becomes more complex. Even individuals with low competence can exhibit high perceived confidence when exposed to repeated validation loops. In other words, confidence perception can decouple entirely from accuracy. This is not an exception, it is a measurable bias. The observer is not evaluating truth, they are evaluating pattern familiarity. The Dunning-Kruger effect is often misunderstood as ignorant people are overconfident. The more precise interpretation is structural. Individuals with low knowledge lack the metacognitive framework to detect uncertainty in their own reasoning. But socially, they may still present high confidence due to absence of internal contradiction signals. Meanwhile, highly competent individuals often underexpress confidence because they are aware of uncertainty gradients. This creates a perceptual inversion. In many environments, confidence is inversely correlated with depth of uncertainty awareness. Detection method: identify individuals who qualify their statements with conditional structures: if, depends on, likely, even when correct. Excessive qualification often signals high internal resolution. This leads into a broader system failure, group-level misattribution of competence. Once a confident individual is perceived as competent, social reinforcement begins to stabilize that perception. Their statements are more likely to be accepted, less likely to be challenged, and more likely to be repeated. This is a feedback loop driven by social proof dynamics. Over time, confidence perception becomes self-reinforcing, independent of actual accuracy. The system begins optimizing for consensus stability rather than truth detection. Social systems do not naturally converge on accuracy. They converge on agreement. Detection method: track whether an individual's ideas are evaluated independently or through prior reputation bias. This sets up the final contradiction. Confidence is not individual, it is distributed across observers. If confidence is a statistical pattern derived from fluency, speed, and social reinforcement rather than internal certainty, then it is not a trait located inside individuals. It is an inference produced by other minds, which means confidence is not something people possess. It is something people collectively assign, and that assignment is often based on shallow cognitive signals that evolved for speed, not accuracy. If this is true, then the people you consider confident may not be more certain than others. They may simply be more efficiently readable within social constraints. And those constraints reward performance, not precision. Now that the mechanism is visible, 3 tools become useful. First, separate fluency from validity. Slow down interpretation of fast, fluent responses. Fluency is not evidence. It is a signal that must be tested. Second, track uncertainty distribution. In genuine expertise, confidence varies across subtopics. Uniform certainty often indicates performance optimization rather than depth. Third, observe correction behavior. Individuals with structurally grounded confidence adjust when presented with new data. Performance-based confidence resists adjustment to preserve coherence. The most reliable indicator of real confidence is not certainty, but responsiveness to contradiction. Confidence, in its strictest psychological sense, is not a feeling of being right. It is the calibrated willingness to update when wrong, and that distinction quietly separates perception from reality in nearly every social interaction. The next layer is not confidence itself, but how authority is constructed when no one is actually certain.